Revelation 17 and 18 now, the woes on Babylon. So let's see where these chapters fit into the flow of Revelation, and let's see where the pieces come together so that we can see the big picture of Revelation. We have understood already that there is this basic structure in Revelation, the central section, the judgments of the Lamb. Okay, the end of that section through chapter 18, that's where we're at right now. So we're coming to the end of the judgments section. The section that follows, chapter 19, will begin the conclusion, which is the grand victory. We're just that close to the end of these judgments. Also, in terms of the more specific outline, we're recognizing that the pattern throughout was the 7 seal judgments, the 7 trumpet judgments, the 7 bowl judgments. We said each one of these was chronological in that each one of these is moving one after another, right? And so the pattern of those are the chronological storyline. However, in between, we have these intermissions. We have these sections that break in and kind of summarize an entire big picture. Sometimes they're making a theological point. Sometimes these sections are showing us a big picture chronology, kind of like a flashback. And if I was putting those sections then into a chronological framework, that chronological framework would work out like this. So here you have the 7 seals, the trumpets, the bowls, all of that as part of the tribulation. The beast and the woman, that summarizes really the history all the way from the cross coming forward to the end. But the woe on Babylon is, as I understand it, primarily focused on the tribulation, with the recognition that it's a valid summary or it's a valid picture describing the long-term conflict between the world and God. So let's understand this a bit. Let's go into the chapter and let's start to understand some concepts here. One thing that I have emphasized a few times but not yet fully explained is a recurring contrast between the people who dwell on earth and those who are in heaven, or those who are at the throne room of God. Well, let's start with the throne room of God. We have these kind of inserted explosions of praise. And I've shown you this chart before. If you just go through the book and you look for a vision in the throne room of heaven and a proclamation of praise, just an explosion of praise, you find these and they really stand out at that point. That all throughout the book, you suddenly have the camera shifting upward and you see that God is sitting on the throne, He is in charge, He has a plan, and all those around Him are praising Him for His glory. And that's a recurring pattern. That recurring pattern intentionally contrasts with another pattern. And the other pattern is the ones dwelling on earth. And the idea of this goes, the camera shifts upward, you see heaven, the camera shifts downward, you see chaos. Let me show you what that looks like. Here we see the judgments that are falling upon earth. Pieces taken from the earth. A fourth part of the earth is killed. The blood of those that dwell on the earth. The stars of heaven fell upon the earth. And then significantly, you have passages in here describing the inhabitants of earth. Here are the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the chief captains. They're hiding under the rocks of the mountains and they're begging for God to take their lives away. And as you just keep on going through the chapter, you see, or through the book, you see the judgments that are falling upon earth, horrifying judgments. You have references like this, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth. Woe to the people who live on earth because of the horror of these judgments. And in fact, the judgment is focused just that way. The judgment is focused on the inhabitants of the earth, those who dwell there. You're supposed to see a strong contrast between the inhabitants of earth and the inhabitants of heaven. A pattern working like this: those that dwell upon the earth, Those that dwell upon the earth, the inhabitants of the earth, they that dwell upon the earth, they're sending gifts to each other to celebrate the death of the prophets. Woe to the inhabitants of earth, all that dwell upon the earth. And we could keep on going. The point of this is those who dwell on earth have placed their allegiance into the hands of the Antichrist, the beast, the dragon, the false prophet. They've placed their allegiance in their hands. And so now you have a very deep contrast. In heaven, God sits upon the throne, and the inhabitants of heaven standing around him praise and honor and glorify him. But when the camera shifts downward, you see earth, and you see the false prophet, you see the beast, and the inhabitants of earth worship him. Remember one of our insights that we saw? The praise of those who dwell on earth, who is like the beast, who has power like unto him. And it's an intentional mocking of the praise that's given to God. There's the dragon, the false prophet, and the beast, and the three together, an intentional aping of the Trinity, the true God. And that strong contrast then, a strong divide, heaven above where God reigns and those who are around him worship him, earth below where the beast temporarily reigns and those around him worship him. It's horrifying. It fits in, if you go back into John's other writing, it fits in with his themes in the Gospel of John and the epistle, the epistle of 1 John, where he speaks of the world. Love not the world, but instead love the Father. All that is in the world is passing away. Now, all of that then I give as a preparation for what we're going to do in these chapters, chapters 17 and 18, because we're here introduced to Babylon, the harlot, the prostitute. And the most important idea I want you to understand from this chapter, kind of the core and the starting point you need to know, is that this chapter intentionally sets up a contrast between Babylon the harlot and Jerusalem the bride. Okay, let me show you what I mean first. Let's go to chapter 18 and let's just recognize this pattern with the harlot. So chapters 18 or 17 and 18 setting us up to see this person, this horrifying person. And you see descriptions like this. Revelation chapter 17. I came and I saw, and here it is, the great whore, the harlot, the prostitute, that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. They have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit in the wilderness. I saw a woman, and here's the description, sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. By the way, that language, a little bit challenging. What is this? Well, that language is intentionally echoing things that we saw back in chapters 12 to 14. The beast also is like this. So there is significant overlap between this harlot and the beast, and we'll keep on seeing why. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet in color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Pause for a second. Some of those descriptions are pictures of wealth. And so you read this and you're having mixed symbolism. Is she prosperous? Yes. She's prosperous, but look, she's sitting on an animal full of blasphemy. And this animal, I mean, here's the description, 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, so she has the closest alliance with this beast, the beast that we met back in 12 to 14, the 7 heads, the 10 horns. She's sitting on it. There's a partnership. She's in agreement. There's almost like there's an agreement and a deal between the two that she will work together, a cooperative agreement. And there's a sense of luxury here, all of the richness of this, but keep on reading. She has a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead, which kind of reminds you of the mark of the beast, is this name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Is this a picture of prosperity and wealth? Sort of, but it's disgusting. And it is exactly, we'll return to this, but it is exactly a perfect picture that she is a prostitute, right? I mean, prostitution has a kind of an impression, externally anyway. People make money this way. There's an impression of wealth and people prospering. They're prospering by selling themselves. And it's a mixed picture of something that has an appearance of wealth, but underneath is absolutely disgusting. I call these chapters then a contrast. I call these chapters a contrast and a tale of two women. A tale of two women or a tale of two cities. Because what you have in chapters 17 and 18 is a description of Babylon the harlot. It will be immediately followed by a description of New Jerusalem, the bride. And the contrast is total. Let me go back though. Let me continue to discuss Babylon the harlot in this framework of the tale of two women. Babylon the prostitute. And I just want you to appreciate the deep depravity, actually the disgust that is all the way throughout, and specifically in relationship or connection with the beast. Okay, so we already saw this, but let's just look at it again briefly. Here we have the angel comes and he shows he comes and he shows the great whore, the harlot that sits upon the many waters. He carried John away in the spirit into the wilderness, and this woman is sitting upon the scarlet-colored beast. That's my point that I made earlier. She's deeply connected with this beast. What beast? The beast that we met earlier. You want to call him the Antichrist. Okay. Keep on going a bit further. Here, there's some description of the 10 horns, which refer to 10 kings that are connected to the beast. And to work through some of that, you can see some of the details that are back in chapters 12 to 14. The 10 horns, or the 10 kings that are connected to the beast, they will hate the harlot. They will make her desolate and naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, to agree, give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God will be fulfilled. What's this describing? It's describing that the kings give up their authority to the beast. And the kings end up doing the beast's will. Ultimately, it's God's will, accomplishing his purposes. And in the end, these same kings who consorted with her, these same kings who committed fornication with her, these same kings who at one point enjoyed her lusts, now hate her. There's no loyalty, there's no permanent relationship, there's no love. It's exactly the picture of a prostitute. They don't love her, they use her. What is Babylon the Great? What are we describing here? Well, you can see that language Babylon is used right in this section. And in that sense, then, there are multiple different descriptions that are interpretations that are given of Babylon. So if we're reading through, we can see Babylon the Great is fallen, that great city Babylon. It's clear that the city is referred to as Babylon throughout. At the same time, there are some indications. You have this reference to 7 hills, and the 7 hills has a very old history connected into Rome. Okay, so there's a very Rome is called the city of 7 hills, and all was back when John was writing this. So there's a very legitimate argument to be made that you're looking at Rome And so Babylon is used as language to describe Rome. In fact, if you go through Revelation and you just watch for this kind of the language of Babylon and so forth, you will find this elsewhere actually describing Jerusalem. Okay, so one other place earlier in much earlier in the book, you see this kind of description for when they kill the two prophets. And the two prophets killed there, it's referred to as that city where their Lord died. Okay. And it's connected into some of this same language. So, excuse me, I'm sorry, not the word Babylon, but referring to it as the great city, Sodom and Egypt. Okay. So in other words, you've got language throughout Revelation, Babylon, language evoking Rome or talking about Rome, Sodom and Egypt. You've got language that's used here, multiple cities, multiple descriptions, and actually that referring to Jerusalem. So how do I put these pieces together? Some people do interpret this as literally Babylon, and their understanding is Babylon will be rebuilt. That's possible. Other people view this as Rome, and that the center of the future one world empire will be the city of Rome. That's also possible. My understanding of this is that probably we're looking at a general description of, let's say, world culture. In fact, there's some interesting connections here. If you're going back, remember, to Daniel, you had the four beasts, starting with Babylon, replaced later by Medes and Persians, replaced by Greece, and then finally by Rome. And in one way, these are four different beasts, or they are four different empires. In another way, they're all connected. Remember, they were all one image at the beginning. Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold. And so you recognize in that framework that really world culture, the different cultures that come, one rises, another falls, the last one eats the previous one. I mean, it's all one. And that would be my preferred way of understanding this. When we're looking at Babylon, or this description here, Babylon that's connected in pictures of Rome and connected into the beast and so forth, what we're looking at is a general picture, world culture, in the sense of, like Psalm 2, the nations, the kings of the earth saying, let us cast their cords asunder, let us break their bands from us, let's rebel against God. And you realize then two concepts that chapters 17 and 18 are explaining to us. One, all of those civilizations and cultures and groups that seem different, they're really one at the core. And what unites them all is their rebellion against God. What unites the civilizations of the world, in fact, what unites humanity, the world, is the language that John uses elsewhere. The world is united in its rebellion against him. It's probably universal. If you read ahead a little bit further in these chapters, you're going to see descriptions that come up in chapter 18. And it's talking about all of the richness that was in Babylon. So the merchants now are weeping, they're crying because no one will anymore buy their wares. And they start listing all of their wares. These are all the things that they're concerned about. And just read through this richness, the wealth that's described here. Merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet, thyine wood, all manner of vessels of ivory, all manner of vessels of wood and brass and iron and marble and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and the souls of men, lives of men. People selling their lives. This could be as specific as prostitution, but probably just that you have slavery and you're selling people as though they are things. Some of these descriptions, like thyine wood, was an incredibly rare wood that just a table of this wood would be worth an entire mansion. Okay, extremely expensive luxury goods. And I think the picture of it goes, how long has planet Earth and all of its rebellion against God and all of world culture, how long has it offered to us anything you could want, feel, taste, experience? If you have enough money, the world can deliver it to your doorstep. They'll give it all to you. Anything you want, just give the money. It's all there. And it's that lie, it's that prostitution. It's the temptation of a seductive wealth that says, look, I can offer you anything you want. The world offers it all. It's that temptation. But at the end then, as you read through these chapters, you read words like, woe. Babylon is fallen. It's destroyed. It's gone. The game is up. The lie is finished. The truth has been revealed. At last, everything that seemed appealing and seductive about the world, about all of this that it offered, all of its wealth, everything that when you walked into a mall, you looked around and said, whoa. All of that seductiveness has been revealed, and you realize it's just a filthy prostitute. There's nothing here. In fact, that's, again, part of the point of this section. Watch what happens when her judgment comes. The merchants weep and they wail and they mourn over her. Why? Because they love her? No, she's a prostitute. And you can see it. They weep and mourn because no one buys their merchandise anymore. I mean, what they're upset about is we were making good money off of her. It's not love. It's purely using her. They're saying, alas, alas, that great city. Why? Because they loved it? No. Because in 1 hour, so great riches has come to naught. We lost our wealth. They cast dust on their heads, they cry and they weep, they're weeping. Alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour she is made desolate. I had a big investment. This is not love. This is using her. And that's my framework then for understanding Babylon as representing the world, the entire lie that is all that this world has to offer. One other reason, let's just see, throughout this chapter, there are these points that explain why she's being destroyed. These are theological insights. God giving a little explanation. Why did he judge the city like this? And let's read these. Chapter 18, I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not her plagues, for her sins have reached unto heaven. Here's the judgment. God hath remembered her iniquities. In 1 hour thy judgment is come. God is judging. This is not just an accident. This is judgment from God. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and holy apostles and prophets. God hath avenged you on her. Why? Because of this, in her were all the great men of the earth deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. One of the ways that Babylon could be wealthy and prosper was by shutting her ears. The world shutting its ears to the obvious message given by God. And by shutting her ears, or said here, by drinking the blood, by murdering the messengers that God sent, she could continue on for a little longer, enjoying all of her luxuries. Remember that disgusting picture at the beginning. Here she is, decked in gold and pearls and scarlet clothing. Here she is with all of the apparent wealth of a prostitute, and she's drinking the blood of the martyrs. Now, in that framework then, this initial command really stands out. Because the response of God's people is, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not her plagues. Look how high her sins have reached, and God will judge her. And the picture of it then is, yes, I live on planet Earth, and yes, I'm surrounded by all of this, and it could be really easy for me to be seduced by the apparent luxuries of this world and all of the things it offers, and to look at all of that and to think for a moment, ooh, maybe that's what matters. That's what I want. And it could be possible for God's people to cast in their investment together with the broken, empty, vile prostitution of this world. I want some of that wealth. That's the good life. And God says, don't be a partaker of her plagues. The more you invest in this, the more you also suffer together with it. Now that then brings us to the contrast. And I will wait to develop this more fully until next time. But you can go forward and just see this now, the contrast of the bride. And the bride, or the picture of the bride now, starts in Revelation 21. And let me just show you a little insight into where this is going. Revelation 21, I saw New Jerusalem coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. One of the seven angels came and said, come hither, I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife. And when he goes, what follows to describe this bride is a picture then of the New Jerusalem. And you see the glory of it. Like a stone most precious, like a jasper stone clear as crystal. You see the glory and the beauty of it in all the walls. The wall of it was jasper. The city was pure gold. The foundation stones. I mean, it's beautiful. And some of the color and the imagery that's connected to it, the bride is dressed in white, pure, clean, holy. It's the relationship with God that it describes. Beautiful. And the picture of it then is not of a prostitute dressed in scarlet with gaudy riches. Oh, look at my pearls and my gold and my wealth. But at the end, she's riding on an animal, a hideous monster. She's in close association with this beast who at the end doesn't care about her anyway. And at the end, she's thrown away. She's stripped and hated and devoured. A prostitute, there's no love. But then now you turn your eyes over here, here's the contrast. Here's the bride, dressed in white. Is there wealth? Yes, gold, precious stones, beauty. But it's not the gaudy picture of a prostitute. Now it's true, pure beauty. And it's a wife. It's relationship. And if over here the prostitute was in a temporary kind of agreement with the beast, over here the New Jerusalem, the bride, is in permanent relationship with God. And it fits into the contrast I started out with. Remember, our contrast was, in heaven, I see the throne room of heaven, I see those worshiping God, and the glory and the beauty and the purity of it, and then the camera turns downward, I see earth, and it's just a mess. And the contrast is between heaven and earth, the heaven dwellers, the saints, versus the earth dwellers, God and Satan. Okay, here also. Here I have the New Jerusalem, the bride, relationship. And here I have Babylon, the world, prostitution. And the picture that Revelation is putting before us is a picture that fits into the entire framework of theology across the New Testament. Don't invest in this world. It's fading. It will go away. It will be destroyed. Worse, even now, it's disgusting. Instead, place your hope and your longing in an eternal reality, waiting for the coming of our Lord and waiting for the beauty of relationship with him. I'll end with one passage taken here from 2 Peter, and it's a beautiful reminder. Since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be in lives of holiness and godliness, waiting and hastening the coming of the day of God? Because we are waiting for a new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. Therefore, beloved, since you are waiting for these, be diligent to be found by him without spot or blemish and at peace. Live faithfully, waiting for the richness of relationship with our God. The church, God's people, Ephesians 5, we are the bride of Christ. The New Jerusalem, Revelation 20, a pure bride in relationship with him. Where is your investment? This is a tale of two cities. It's a tale of two women. It's really a tale of two eternal destinies. Where have you placed your investment? In the city, the prostitution of apparent luxury, or placing your heart and your life in investing in eternity, the bride, the wife of the Lamb, those realities that last forever? By God's grace, I pray that we will be faithful to invest in what truly endures, the pure and good relationship that he intends for all of us.